people can diet a lot faster than they do. And I've heard you talk about that as well. And I think that's important when we're talking about general population versus, contest bodybuilders. And I would agree that if you are trying to get contest lean, you have to take it a lot slower, of course, than if you're 40 pounds overweight, and you're trying to lose 30 of that. So I guess if you could just talk about how quickly you like to have clients lose weight when people come to you. And of course, there's going to be variation in all of that. But how much faster are we able to lose fat compared to the maybe 1 pound a week that is often told?
Yeah. So, I think I started talking about this in 2015 when I was basically asked to speak to a massive group of evidence-based personal trainers. And the term evidence-based and personal trainer doesn't really go together very often. So I was honestly, I wasn't nervous, but I put a lot of thought into when I present. It's one of my passions. It's one of the things I'm probably most well known for. And I always want to think about the audience and think what they will take away. And I knew this audience had some webinars from me. They'd had teach, I had educated some of their educators, and I knew that they had a really good grounding. And I wasn't going to be able to go in there and go, yeah, keto, carbs don't make you fat, and not everyone needs to eat breakfast. And, I do that in anywhere else, and I'm like, no way.
Right.
Sugar's not toxic, no way. So I thought really hard about how can it was like an 8-hour speaking slot. It's like an hour for lunch and a couple of breaks. So I thought I need to deliver here. And one of the key areas, I kind of observed this group and, some of their online stuff. And I realized that they were all such nice people that they were being too moderate in their approaches, and they weren't being evidence-based because they were being too nice. There's this idea that you'll see on the internet, and I won't name any names, but this idea, just give people one habit at a time. If you just give them one habit, then they'll be able to, that's the only sustainable way to help people lose weight, not evidence-based.
Right.
I'm sure there will be people listening to your podcast who still believe that. And it's one of these things, even as evidence-based practitioners, you have to hear someone like me say that and then go, I believe that. And it'll trigger people, and they'll go, no, you're wrong, Martin. And then your goal is to go away and disprove yourself. That is kind of science, disprove yourself. If you can't, then you're onto something, and then start working your way. But if you can't, lots of things, and I'm a big proponent of calling myself out when I've had a message and I've told people this happened after all of my degrees and multiple postgraduates. There were certain things I was never taught, and I just picked up, and then someone challenged me, and I was like, okay, let me find a study. Oh my goodness, I'm actually off base. So anyway, this whole one habit at a time. And we know from the obesity research that more rapid weight loss strategies often have better outcomes than more moderate approaches. And I can talk a bit more about some of the quite cool findings of that. But in 2015, I basically realized that we know that clients underreport, for instance. So they're going, I'm going to put this person in a 200 to 250, 300, 400 calorie deficit. They're not losing weight. Mm-hmm. And or doing, I'm just going to change this habit. I'm going to get them to take one fish oil a day and tick it off on a sheet. And then the next week, I'm going to make them chew their food 20 times. And my clients aren't staying with me. Does anyone know how I can get more clients? No, you don't need to get more clients. You need to retain your clients by doing a better job and doing stuff that has an actual magnitude of effect. And there's this big thing about never put someone on less than 1,000 calories a day. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's almost like it's like 1,000 calories. Anything below that, and you're a bro.
Right.
A metabolically damaged people, and you're trying to, screw people up. So I basically went into this talk to basically say to them, stop being so evidence-based. And what I mean by that is stop being so damn nice. Stop pussyfooting around. Some people, if they're very short, very light, inactive, female, they might have to diet on less calories than that. And on the flip side of that, regardless of where maybe their BMR or their TDEE may sit, a huge calorie deficit might be more effective. And actually, I wrote an article on this to do with, I think it was to do with dieting to single-digit body fats or something or other, for the Alan Aragon Research Review. But basically looked at this decaying rate of weight loss for people wanting to get to, like you were talking about, the contest type guys.
Right.
And actually having a different speed of weight loss. So if you just literally go, in contest prep, I'm going to go a pound a week. And a pound a week towards the end of your diet, and even, I can't remember the maths that I did, might actually be too fast, and you're definitely going to be losing lean body mass at that rate. But at the beginning, you're losing time. So what needs to happen is this like decaying curve down. I don't know if that's, I can't see myself. Yeah, like down like this. And what that's based on is basically the ability, the amount of fat you have, and the ability to mobilize and make fatty acids available for oxidation and to use as an energy source, as a substrate for, exercise and daily tasks. If you are very, very lean, the ability for agile lipolysis and make those fatty acids available is less. So if you're in a big calorie deficit, and I don't know the author of this study actually, but basically, it begins with B. Anyway, looking at athletes below the level of 10% body fat, and actually that is a key area where lean body mass losses become an issue specifically, and it's probably more related to this mobilization of fat. So the study is by Alpert, and I think it's like 1978, as early as that, but it looked at this, and there was actually a recent update of the paper that looked at this, the rate limiting factor. And you can basically follow the maths on from that, and to give people a simple rule. So let's take a Gen Pop client who's 40% female, 40% body fat. So not hugely high for a female, not out of the realms of normality for a weight loss client. And essentially you do body fat percentage. In fact, I'm going to use 45. I had a client, one of my recent clients before I stopped working with clients, was 48%. So we'll call her 45% body fat.
How do you test that?
Say again?
How are you personally testing that? I'm just curious.
So she was tested via DEXA. And one thing I will say is every single method we use for testing body fat is a stab in the dark. DEXA is obviously one that people are going, it's the gold standard. But honestly, it's still not really, because it was designed for bone mineral density, as you'll know. That's what it's the gold standard for. The gold standard is a 4-compartment model, which, funnily enough, the Longland et al. 2016 study where they showed muscle gain in a calorie deficit, people are like, no way, that never happened, your study's rubbish. And they literally had done the 4-compartment model, which like no other study in the world does. Everyone, we did skin fold calipers and bicep girth to estimate muscle mass.
Right.
These guys had people doing DEXA, bioelectrical impedance analysis, like ridiculous. So yeah, that was via DEXA. So 45% body fat. You divide that body fat percentage by, and I kind of give the initial Alpert study said if you use their data it's 13. If I think it's Greg Knuckles, but don't quote me on that, has said more like 20 based on their updated stuff. And I, taking that plus all the other fast rates of weight loss studies, I feel like 15 is a good number you can use. If you want to be super conservative, which I don't see why anyone would want to be with a lot of body fat to lose, because lean body mass loss is irrelevant anyway. Like, you'll gain it back so fast. Muscle memory is a thing. And most of your Gen Pop clients, for instance, I'll take this client I'm talking about, she didn't care if she lost some muscle.
Right.
And she was fairly untrained, so it was highly unlikely she was going to, and we could easily gain more muscle than she started with, all of these factors. So yeah, if you've got a comp prep bodybuilder, maybe go to 20. So yeah, divide that 45 by 15 gives you 3, and that's 3% of current body weight. And she was very heavy.
Right.
I think she was about 125 kilos ish. So you go, let's call it 120 kilos. You go 3% of your 120 kilos, and suddenly, what was it, 1 pound you used in the example? So that's like 484 grams, like half a kilogram. Suddenly, you go 3% of 120. 1% of 120 is 1.2 kilograms. So we're talking 3.6 kilograms a week possible, which is then like, what, 7.2 and a fifth, so like 7.9 pounds a week. Potentially this lady would be able to lose in purely fat mass.
I think I might have, maybe I heard you wrong, or maybe you misspoke. Did you say 15 would be more conservative? Because I would think that'd be more aggressive, right? You'd end up getting a bigger number.
I did say that. What you're saying is correct. 15 is slightly more aggressive. 20 is more conservative.
Okay.
So yeah. So for instance, if we go conservative, you can go. What numbers was I using? 45. So 45 divided by 20, and that will give you a more conservative figure.
Right. Okay. And so this would apply even for.
There's a fast rate, right? Go on, you go.
Oh, so yeah, I'm just thinking a lot of the people who watch this, we definitely have some general population who might be 45%. I think a lot of the population is people who have been lifting, I would say like intermediate lifters. But let's use somebody like myself. So I've been lifting for, depending on how seriously I take it, 12 to 14 years, I would say. So I'm pretty much have all the muscle mass I'm going to have. And if let's say I'm 205 pounds now, I don't know, let's say 15%, but again, that's a visual. So if I want to get to 185, right, I'm going to be beach lean. I'm definitely not going to be close to contest lean. You would still use that formula and give us, if you could maybe use those real world numbers, roughly how fast do you think somebody could get there? Yeah,
cool. That's amazing. So if you said, what did you say, body weight? 205?
Yeah, and let's say roughly 15%. Okay, so let's say a little over 30 pounds of body fat.
Perfect. So in that instance, let's just make it even easier. So if we go 200 pounds and 15% body fat, so we do the simple thing of 15% divided by 15, so 1%. And so in that instance, if you wanted to be 100% sure and be conservative that you wanted to lose only fat mass, and this is day-to-day basis, but also cumulative for the whole of your diet, and people forget this. And if they don't listen to all of, like, I've kind of got some lectures on this, if they forget that if they're doing this, and I'll talk about how you do this pragmatically, actually. This is going to be a good podcast, by the way. So, in your instance, it was 15 divided by 15 is 1, and that's 1% of total body weight, and 1% of 200 pounds is 2 pounds. So we're going to be looking for 2 pounds a week. And then what you do for that is you then work out the supposed calorie deficit you would need to lose 2 pounds a week, which, nicely enough, most people know this, 3,500 approximately, if we just ignore all of the stuff that Kevin Hall's done disproving that because he's too clever. But approximately, because you're going to misreport anyway. So we're going to look for a 7,000 calorie deficit per week to lose these 2 pounds. The problem is if people do any kind of refeeds or changes in that affects the macro. So you can't just go 1,000, because what I would personally do is so that's 7 days, 1,000 calorie deficit each day. I personally would go like 1,500 calorie deficit a day. The reason I do that is I feel better that way. As a process, and I can talk about this a bit about this, but as a process and for my adherence, it's better. The thing that happens then is I lose lean body mass. But what people need to remember is when you lose lean body mass, it's not necessarily myofibrillar proteins we're talking about. It's things like muscle glycogen. So we need to dip into other sources because we can't purely use fat. So you will then start to become glycogen depleted. Then my personal preference is to do that for a period and then do a refeed period of whatever it is suitable for me at that time. If I'm wanting to maybe try and have some small beneficial metabolic and hormonal effects, I'll try and do a refeed for 72 hours. If it's just for me, for pleasantries, for social, it might just be a single day, for instance. But then I look at, right, I dieted on a 1500 calorie deficit for 2 weeks, but on day 14, I had all of these extra calories, and my average over that should come out somewhere around 1,000 a day if I want to purely be losing lean body mass. So in your instance, what would happen is you would have to have this decaying thing if you don't want to lose muscle. So you would start at 2 pounds. And obviously, once you've lost those 2 pounds, your body fat percentage is going to go down by a very small amount, obviously. So then that 2 pounds needs to go, eventually it'll be 1.5 and 1.5. This is if you don't want to lose any muscle whatsoever.
Right.
And you know, you're going to get very lean doing so. So that's more of that's where this kind of moderate rate has come from. Fitness industry, personal trainers. If every personal trainer is 15% body fat and less, they do need to diet slowly or they're going to lose muscle. You know, they need to diet slower than 2 pounds a week. But even then, lots of people focus on 1/2 to 1 because that's going to make you look better on stage, bro. But it's not the case.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make, because if people just hear, oh, you can actually diet way more aggressively, they might think, oh, great, I'm 15%, I can lose 5 pounds a week. But even, you know, with this decaying, you know, rate, you're still probably looking at about 15 weeks to lose that 20 pounds. You know, we're not talking an incredibly rapid pace here if you're already lean compared to 30, 40% body fat.